Welcome to episode 1 of So Many Thoughts by Chelsea. Sit yourself down, take a seat. All you gotta do is listen to my thoughts about the world. Let's talk about sewing machines for a second. A lot of you have been saying, I just bought my first sewing machine, or I just got a serger, or I've had a serger and it's been sitting in the box for a year because I'm too afraid to get it out. I wanted to share a few thoughts around that, mostly because I'm actually in your boat right now, where I am trying out a different sewing machine to see how it fits me. Problem with that is, as many of you know, or maybe you don't, I like to sew. I started sewing on a Brother machine. I've had that same Brother machine. It's the Brother and Novus Project Runway Edition. So fancy. That was a big deal back in like 2015 or 14 or whenever. I don't even remember when I got it. And it's been so good to me. But just like technology, things change like really quickly in the sewing world, right? Like sewing machines, you can like basically have them cook your dinner for you now. That's kind of a tricky topic for me because technology is typically like something I'm a little uncomfortable with learning. I sew on Brother. I like to sew on Baby Lock machines. And they are sister companies. Like their interfaces look the same. It's all kind of similar, right? So like bouncing between a newer Baby Lock and an older Brother or whatever isn't terribly stressful. The machine that I just recently picked up to look over and kind of feel it out is the Juki 4000 some other letters. I'll put it here so you can, but it is a monster of a machine. So I get this machine home. It's enormous. My husband has to carry it upstairs for me because it's so large. I get the machine out and I sit down and plug it in, and like, I don't even know once I turn it on, like what is happening. Like it is so overwhelming looking. It has like buttons and like a touch screen and all kinds of like scrolling, and it was overwhelming to say the least. So I sat with it for like an hour or so, and after like 30 minutes, finally figured out how to thread a bobbin. I started to sew with it, and I'm not gonna lie to you, within an hour I had made up my mind, like this was going back in the box, like this was not the machine for me. So I like turned it off and I went downstairs, and I, you know, every time I passed by it on my way to do the laundry and stuff, I would like angrily stare at it for being so fancy. The reason I have this machine is because my machines are in the shop, and Jeremy at Sewing Parts Online was kind enough to lend me this one to work on while my machines are being fixed. I immediately in the morning was like, well, this is going back like as soon as possible. All I really needed to do was like actually dedicate some time to like sit down and just mess with it and see what happened. I made up my mind yesterday morning. I sat down at the machine and I was going to sew. I had a project I needed to work on from like start to finish. This is a good opportunity to like give it another try. And I fought with it for a little while. After a few minutes, it started to get a little bit easier. And then after a few more minutes, it started to get even more easier. And I was surprised because this is like a totally different looking interface. Like, and by interface, if you're not familiar, it means like the screen and like the functionality is just totally different brand to brand. So this is a Juki. I'm used to sewing, like I said, on Brother and Baby Lock. Anyway, I'm starting to get to like know this machine. And then I realized like 30 minutes in that I'm actually kind of enjoying it. And I'm having fun sewing on this machine, and I'm making this face a lot. Like where you see that it does something that your machine doesn't do that's like actually pretty amazing. For example, this Juki, like to wind a bobbin, you just like push this little thing in and it winds it for you. Like on my machine, I have to push the pedal. It has this button where it like when you finish sewing, it cuts it, but then it also lifts your presser foot for you. So you can just pull the work out. Little things that you wouldn't necessarily think of as like amazing, but once you start using it, you're like, how did I live without this? Let me get around to the point. A lot of you are buying new sewing machines, and I love that. I love when you ask me for recommendations, and then you tell me a little bit about where you're at in your sewing journey and what you are interested in sewing, and I can help sort of lead you to some machine options that are good for you. What I notice a lot is y'all get these machines, and I get, you know, messages back saying like, this is too much machine for me, or I'm afraid to get it out of the box. And this happens a lot with sewing machines, but also happens a lot with sergers because let's be honest, they are aggressive and a little bit scary, and there's so many threads and you're afraid you're going to screw it up. But here's the thing about that. What do you have to lose? If it's sitting in a box in your dining room that you've never gotten it out, you're not going to lose any more money than you've already spent on the machine. The deed is done. You've spent the money. What do you have to lose at this point? I mean, if you get it out and it's, you mess with it, it's not any worse than if you just left it in the box. I would say the number one thing I hear from you guys is like, I'm afraid I'm going to break it. Aside from like dropping it out of a window or like taking a sledgehammer to your sewing machine, there's very little chance that you're going to break it. They wouldn't put those buttons and levers and different like options on there if they didn't want you to like use them, right? So sit down at your machine like I did today, and I just sat there and I pushed the buttons. I was like, what does this do? And if I was confused, I got the manual out. I did that probably 6 or 7 times just because it was saying words that I didn't understand, like parts that go to this machine that I had never like heard of before. So get the machine out, push all the buttons, lift all the levers, look at the manual, take the time to learn it because you will be so proud of yourself when you do. That's how I felt about this Juki machine. At first I was like, there's no way. I hate this machine. It's going back. After sewing on it yesterday for a couple hours, I absolutely love this machine. I may not be able to send this back because I might need to buy it because I love it so much. Really, the point of all this is just to encourage you. If you're trying something new and it feels scary, in this circumstance, I'm specifically talking about technology new, like with your sewing machine, but really it applies to anything in any hobby in life, or really anything. You have to give it some time. Change is like extremely hard for me, and I'm sure it is for a lot of you out there too. There's 2 paths that can go, right? So change when it comes to a sewing machine, maybe for you, is that you've never had a sewing machine. So like this is a lot of change because you don't know anything about what these buttons do or how it works. Change for me as somebody who's been sewing for a long time is I know how to use my machine and I want to get right into my project and get going. But I can't because I have a handicap of not knowing what any of these buttons do on this new machine that has a totally different interface. In both situations, I feel like the change that can be remedied here is that you just need to sit down and try and put some effort in and decide that you will try and conquer this and that you don't know everything about it, but that you can learn it, and to have a willing attitude. So that's what I went into this with yesterday that I didn't go into it with the day before when I wanted to like just pack it up and give it back. That's what I'm going to leave you with today, is just a message of be patient and be dedicated, and don't be afraid to try something different. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. You may surprise yourself with how awesome whatever that thing is. Just know that I'm very proud of you. And for those of you who have purchased new sewing machines, that's exciting. Good for you. And I hope that you find the love and joy that I find out of sewing. It's just a really fun hobby. If you guys have questions, I'm always here to help you, and I'd love to help answer, or guide you through whatever issue you're dealing with. Let me know too if you like these kind of like just sitting and chatting and sewing videos, and if you have any other topics you would want me to sit and just kind of talk about that would be helpful for you to learn about or just to talk through. I think that's one of the things that new sewists really don't have, is like a resource to just like sit down and ask questions to and talk to. So let me know. I'll be that person for you. Thanks for listening to me ramble. I'm Chelsea with She Sews Seams, and I'll see you next time.